Hello everybody, my name is Mark Halsey and I'm here with Fiona Halsey, and together we are Halsey Legal. The topic for discussion today is the conversion of clients from retail clients to wholesale clients. Some very good reasons why businesses would look to offering this as an option for their clients. Firstly, it is much more costly to service from a compliance perspective a retail client as compared to a wholesale client, and therefore there are cost advantages in terms of looking at people who can be classified as wholesale clients and to deal with them as wholesale clients. In addition, from a client's perspective, there is a proportion of the market that demand a much more sophisticated product or service that can only be offered to them as wholesale clients. It cannot be offered to them as retail clients. So with those two forces at play, there is a move, there is a demand to try and convert people from retail clients to wholesale clients. So I guess we can kick it off by asking you, Fiona, can it be done and how can it be done?
It can be done with some clients and in respect of some products.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certainly some possibilities there. But before we go on, I will say this is very dense legislation. It's really detailed, and we're giving a high-level overview today. So I'd say that you could best describe this, or you could best say, don't do this at home, kids. Make sure you've got some proper advice, before you do any of this.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very detailed area.
Yep.
But yes, so I'm going to discuss in brief terms. In brief terms, there are 6 ways that a person can be classified as a wholesale client.
Mm-hmm.
And of those, there are 3 which are the most common ones we see in practice. And they are where somebody is what I'll call an experienced investor. And then there are 2 which involve accountant certificates. So I'll just give a brief outline of what those are.
Sure.
And so the first is a circumstance where you have a person who has got sufficient experience in consuming financial services and investing in financial products, and an AFS licence C gives a type of confirmation that they've effectively done that. And that means that they can then be classified as experienced. That's the word we're using for them. It seems like the most accurate description. And they will be a wholesale client. So
it's virtually self-certifying. The licensee puts the proposition to the client agrees that they are an experienced investor.
Yes, although it's more the licensee actually making that determination.
Mm-hmm.
It's more the licensee doing it. The client has to provide an acknowledgement that they haven't received one of what I'll call a retail client disclosure document.
What are those?
That would include a statement of advice, a record of advice, fee disclosure statement, PDS, a range of those documents.
Right.
So they'd have to certify that, they have to acknowledge that they've never received any of those, and they have to do that in writing.
And if they have?
If they have received any of those, you can never convert them.
Right.
At least that licensee can't ever convert them.
Okay.
Okay, so that's interesting.
Yes.
Okay. But there's another significant caveat to this, and that applies to the 3 types of investors we're going to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that if you've acquired a financial product as a retail client, you dispose of the product as a retail client. Okay? And you can imagine what the consequences of that are. So if, for example, and that is not licensee specific. Okay. So if you're client A and you have acquired that product as a retail client with an SOA, okay, it's effectively contaminated forever, okay, because at the time you want to if you are an advisor and you're recommending the disposal of that product, well, you're doing it as a retail client, okay, so you're going to have to give your SOA in respect of it.
So can I just ask, I'm licensee B, the client has been seen by licensee A, they come to me with products they obtained as a retail client, they come to me with an accountant certificate. Even in those circumstances when I'm recommending the disposal of those particular products, I have to make that recommendation to that person in their capacity as a retail client, irrespective of the accountant certificate, because they hold and acquired those products as retail clients.
That is absolutely correct.
Wow.
there's quite a lot in this legislation where it's, like there's a lot in this legislation where you're uncertain about it. Okay, but that is black and white. Okay, so yeah, no issues. That is exactly what it is. The product is, you've acquired it as a retail client, you'll dispose of it as a retail client.
Okay, well, I interrupted your flow. Go
so it wasn't much, but interesting.
It is very interesting.
Okay, so then you've got the other two, and the other two involve the accountant certificates.
Yes.
Okay, and the first is you've got an accountant certificate to say that you've had gross income in the last 2 financial years of at least $250,000. Okay? And the other one is an accountant certificate which says that you've got net assets of at least 2.5 million. And certainly that second one is actually really quite a small amount of money, especially when you consider that it, includes a family home.
Right, yeah, for sure.
It's not that's not much money on it.
Particularly in Sydney.
Well, there's an awful lot of wholesale investors there.
Yeah.
So if you've got those two, okay, then the question about having received one of the disclosure documents doesn't come in. Okay, so it's an easier situation, though you've still got your product problem about, you've acquired something. But in those circumstances, you could potentially transition somebody to becoming wholesale.
Right.
But I think there are certainly some concerns around doing it.
Yes.
And you'd want to be, it's certainly an area of vulnerability.
So what are those complexities?
Yes. So one of the things is that a retail client has a whole lot of protections. So they are, they have ready access to AVCA, for example. They are entitled to SOAs, they get free disclosure statement. There's a lot of protections that they receive. If they're wholesale, they don't get those. They haven't got those protections anymore. And the other thing is that if you read any of the determinations that are made about investors who have sued or made a complaint about their advisors in respect of either AVCA or the courts, the level of knowledge which is assumed by each of AVCA and the courts in respect of wholesale investors is really quite large. And I've often wondered, in some cases, I thought, wow, it really does suggest that they are a much less vulnerable client. So if something goes wrong, they're much less likely to be able to recover against their advisor as well.
Right.
So it's significant.
But AVCA have an interesting treatment of wholesale clients, don't they?
Oh, they do. They do. And there's a mistaken view out there that a wholesale client can't go to AVCA. Okay, and that is just not the case. AVCA has the ability to exclude a wholesale client, okay, but they very rarely do it. And a few years ago, we had someone who was actually on the BRW rich list. Okay, now, not all of you will remember the BRW rich list, but my recollection
Top
is this
200 people in the country.
And my recollection is this guy had $670 million.
Right.
Okay, and he brought a complaint in AVCA, and AVCA didn't dismiss it.
Right.
So it's there is this mistaken thought that you can't get into AVCA, but you absolutely, that's not how it is.
So it's a discretion on AVCA's part whether they hear the complaint or not, so long as the licensee is a member, obviously, of AVCA.
Well, that's right, exactly. And that is the point that comes up, and that is that if you are a licensee that is only wholesale, then you don't have to be a member of AVCA. Okay. Whereas if you are a licensee that's got a retail authorisation, okay, so you're doing retail and wholesale clients, then you have to be a member of AVCA. As soon as you've got that retail licence, you have to be a member, and then potentially everyone's in. So yeah, it's quite a risk. But going back to your question of accountant certificates and whether you can convert, okay. That is something that I think you could come down to a pretty simple question. That is, you certainly can, but should you?
Right.
Okay. And I think that's a very interesting question when you think about your obligations to your client.
Very good. Well, that's an interesting place to start. There will be additional presentations and discussions that we have in relation to wholesale investors, but as you can probably tell from the expression on my face, there are a couple of things that I learnt in terms of this discussion. And thank you very much. And we look forward to continuing this discussion on wholesale clients in the subsequent presentation.
Great. Well, thanks for your help with this. That was really great. And one thing is that I did mention at the beginning of this video that don't do anything without getting proper advice, and I'll just stress that again. This is certainly an area where you do need specific advice. But thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Bye.